Before I get into this, I do want to give a little warning. I'm about to make some people with the low self-esteem mad, but that's just how the internet is. So I guess we'll just deal with that. I want to preface this by saying there's a difference between dating and in a relationship. Dating can range anywhere from texting someone in a romantic sense all the way to being intimate and having a situationship. When I speak of dating, that range is me getting to know someone. I also do not date to marry. I date to learn about people. I date to learn about myself. I date to learn new skills. Dating to me is just experiencing a person. I don't have any ulterior motives when it comes to dating. Public just means social events. Yes, we go on dates. Yes, we go outside. Yes, we do everything outside. And also living in New York City, there's a reason why celebrities can just walk around all willy-nilly, because you can be surrounded by millions of people and still not really, it's not really like a show and tell. You understand what I'm saying? Now, with that being said, there's a reason why a lot of people, especially girls in my career field or in the creative field, or they have a high profile sense in their own world, we just don't like to claim men. We just don't like to be seen with men. And there's a reason for that. A lot of girls like me that are very, very successful, we get our own money, we provide for our own life. Anything we want, we get it for ourselves. We don't date for money. We don't date for fame. We don't date for proximity. So with that being said, because we are such coveted individuals, men like to prey on that, right? Men like to use that as weapon. Men like to use that as a trophy. Men like to use a woman like me and parade her around regardless of the ulterior motive.
I think in this generation, a lot of people have completely lost their mind. Nobody knows what those words mean anymore. Dating, relationship, they don't know. Everything is blurred. Everybody's got situationships, friends with benefits, exclusive, but not together. We're talking, but it's complicated. Man, it's just so many things, what just happened to telling the truth? Here's my opinion. And I know some people aren't going to like it. What I do agree with is dating and a relationship are not the same thing. I agree with that. Stop acting like they are. Dating is the process of getting to know somebody, right? You're gathering information. You're asking questions, right? You're seeing if your values line up, with the person. You're seeing if your faith lines up with the person. You're seeing if this is somebody you can actually build a life with. That's dating. A relationship is different. A relationship is when a man has made a decision that he wants to pursue you with intention. There's commitment, right? There's accountability. There's expectations. There's direction, right? And if we're being real, that's where most people get hurt, the relationship side of things, because one person thinks they're dating and the other person thinks they're building a future. The two people are not aligned. That's a recipe for a disaster. This is why I tell people all the time, stop being scared to have uncomfortable conversations early in relationships. Whether you dating or you in a serious relationship, ask the question, what are we doing? I know people, hate the question because they're afraid they're going to lose somebody. That's why it's got so complicated, right? But let me help you. If asking what the relationship is scares somebody, good. They were going to waste your time anyways. Stop protecting temporary people from permanent conversations. It shouldn't be a problem to ask somebody what we're doing. And here's where I'm probably going to make some people mad. I don't believe Christians should be dating just to collect experiences. I just don't. I think we have normalized wasting people's time. What she was talking about to me, it sounded like you're wasting time. You went on 8 dates, 10 dates, 12 dates, 6 months, a year, 2 years. And then you finally say, I just don't see a future. Really? It took you a year to figure that out. Come on now. At some point you're not dating anymore. You're just enjoying attention. I don't got time for all of that other stuff. You're just enjoying companionship. Not showing the person who I'm dating and all of this other type of stuff. This is just crazy stuff. A whole bunch of selfish stuff, man. And fellas, let me talk to y'all for a second. Stop asking women to give you wife level commitment while you're not there and confuse yourself. That's why I tell men to wait. Either lead or leave her alone. You know, stop telling a woman, let's just see where it goes, you know, for 3 years or 4 years, whatever. Come on, bro. If after 3 years you still don't know where it's going, you doing what she's doing. You know, I know where that's all going, nowhere. And ladies, I'm going to say something that may sting a little bit, you know, here. Stop interviewing for the position of a wife when the man hasn't even opened the application. You know, you're cooking, cleaning, sleeping together, playing house, sacrificing your peace, you know, introducing him to your family, you know, and the man still introduces you as my friend. You know, come on, what are y'all doing? Got all kind of stuff going on right now. You're giving relationship benefits to somebody who hasn't even shown you a relationship commitment yet. You know, I don't agree with what she was saying and everything like that, but I mean, come on, we gotta make this work. We gotta do better. You know, I mean, at the end of the day, people could date how they want. You know, it is what it is. God give us free will, but don't ignore the results. You know, we have more confusion out here, more broken hearts, more trust issues, and more people saying, I'm done with dating than we ever had before because of all of this type of stuff people are talking about. Not making sense. Everybody is a dating coach now. You know, but here's what I believe. Dating should have purpose. It should. You know, I don't believe you should date somebody because you're bored. I don't believe you should be dating because you're lonely. You know, I don't believe you should be dating because all your friends are in relationships. You know, date because you're trying to determine if the person is that person that God may have for you in your life. Date seriously, not all this other stuff. See, that's completely different. And if you're after a reason, if it's been a reasonable amount of time, you know, and you realize they're not serious, respectfully move on. Stop holding people hostage because you're afraid of being alone. You know, loneliness is a terrible reason to stay in a wrong relationship. You know, I believe you should date with intention, but if it ain't working, move on. Stop wasting time. You know, that's why I do agree that dating and relationships are two totally different things. But I think they both should be done with intention. You know, social media has convinced people that every person you have dinner with deserves an announcement. No. Some of y'all introduce 5 different people in 1 year and then wonder why nobody takes your relationship serious anymore, or the person that's in a relationship with you isn't taking it serious. You're not dating with intention. I'm just saying, man, I'm just looking at these videos and I'm like, what is people talking about? What's going on? You know, so when it comes down to dating, you got to really ask yourself, is this something that I want to give my time or not? You know, it's one thing that she said in the video that I really just totally disagree with. You know, and I mentioned it earlier, but I'm going to mention it again. You know, basically, if not letting people know who you are, not representing you and things like that. Let me tell you this, man. And this is real truth, what I'm about to say real fast. If a woman is into you, she's going to let everybody know who you are. If she's not into you, then she's going to hide you. Like she was saying, she hide her men, and how other women hide their men who are entertainers or have a social media presence. Every girl I was with claimed me. Period. And if they weren't, they were doing something on the side. They didn't want other people to know who they were friends with on social media because they may got something else going on. But you got to recognize that. But over here basically saying, oh, yeah, you know, girls nowadays, they don't show, you know, who they're with and the men and things like that, you know, because, you know, we got a presence. Come on, man. That ain't how it work. That ain't how it work. So I'm just saying, men, if your woman ain't claiming, you walk away. But I think everybody should be dating with intention. And when you're in a relationship, you should be in a relationship that should be leading to marriage. I don't think dating should be for no reason. That's how it ended up, like we see most of these relationships out here. So I'm going to leave it there, man. It's your boy, Paul P. Thanks for watching. I'm out of here. Deuces.